Good afternoon and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Europe is currently witnessing a sharp spike in new COVID-19 cases. Most of the countries have revised their COVID-19 restrictions to contain the growing outbreak. Germany is one of Europe's worst affected nations. On Friday, the German health authorities said that the coronavirus infections are rising at an exponential rate and that the emerging mutant COVID variants are driving up the numbers in the European nations. The authorities say that it is possible that the country might go back to pre-holiday situation where death and infection figures were high and the healthcare system was overwhelmed. Thursday was a concerning day for German authorities. Germany recorded its highest number of new COVID-19 infections since January, 17,500 new cases in just 24 hours. Now, talking about Poland, the nation's COVID infection figures have doubled since February and have strained the healthcare system. To contain the spread, Poland announced a 3-week nationwide lockdown on Wednesday. It is not just Poland. Half of Italy is now under one of the strictest COVID lockdowns. Schools, daycare centers, restaurants have all been declared shut in 9 Italian regions to contain the spike in infections. Moving to France, a month-long lockdown has been reimposed in Paris, the French capital, and with that, strict weekend lockdowns are in place for regions around the French Riviera and the English Channel. In the last few weeks, the European Union has come under heavy fire for its slow vaccination rollout. Germany has been slammed for its faltering vaccination drive. Earlier, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that all Germans will be vaccinated by the end of September. But at present, only a little over 8% of Germans have received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. Amid spiking numbers and a slow rollout, 13 EU nations have suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine over reports of blood clots among vaccine recipients. However, on Thursday, the EU's medical regulator concluded that the AstraZeneca jab is safe and effective, and that now it all falls on member states to decide whether they want to restart vaccinations. Chelsea Delaney, our correspondent from DW, is joining us live from Berlin for more on this story. Good afternoon to you, Chelsea. Now, the European health officials had been warning of a third wave of infections, and now it appears to have arrived. Give us an overview of what the situation is like on the ground there.
Well, the message from experts across Europe is certainly that we are in the third wave, and it's likely only going to get worse in the weeks ahead. We have been seeing infection rates climbing over the past couple of weeks, but really in the past several days, infection rates have really started to spike. Here in Germany, we've reported both yesterday and today nearly 20,000 new daily infections. That's the highest level since January, and there are other countries that are starting to see hospital systems in particular become overwhelmed. For example, in Paris and parts of Eastern Europe, they have been reporting increasing strain on their intensive care units. This is going to put a lot more pressure on governments to increase restrictions. We've already seen France and Italy reimpose lockdown measures. Here in Germany, the government had actually been easing lockdown measures over the past couple of weeks, but just earlier today, the health minister, Jens Spahn, said that it's unlikely that we'll see any sort of continuation of easing of the lockdown. And actually, it looks more like we might have to take some steps back because Germany is reaching a level of infections that could become an exponential growth in infections. So it does look likely that these hoped for resumption of some of normality as we head into the spring, that isn't going to be happening anytime soon.
Right. The European Medicines Agency ruled yesterday on the safety of the AstraZeneca vaccine after several countries had suspended using it following the reports of blood clots. What are the details of this decision?
So the European Medicines Agency did confirm yesterday that this AstraZeneca vaccine is safe. They said that they couldn't definitively rule out that there is a link between blood clots and the vaccine, but overwhelmingly that there's evidence that it's safe and that any risk of blood clots is outweighed by the benefits of having been vaccinated against the coronavirus. So we've already seen many countries here in Europe, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, say that they're going to start giving getting coronavirus, the AstraZeneca vaccine once again in the coming days. Germany is going to really go into overtime in the next couple of days as they try and get some of these people who had their appointments canceled in this past week to get those vaccines. So some of the vaccine centers here in Berlin, for example, will be open quite late. There is still, of course, the question of what the damage has been to the European vaccine effort, which has already really struggled and is really lagging behind those in the U.S. and the U.K., Israel. The EU is trying to really ramp up. They say that they should, in the next month, start to receive a much more vaccine supply. But given how much skepticism there already has been over the AstraZeneca vaccine, this could certainly add to people's doubts about getting a vaccination, especially from AstraZeneca's shot.
Right. Now, the EU laid out its plans to create a digital vaccination certificate by summer that would then enable the reopening of travel. Is this still on track, and how would it work?
It is definitely on track. The EU hopes to have it up and running by June or July, so in the summer. The digital certificate would include 3 pieces of information: whether somebody has been vaccinated against the coronavirus, but also whether they've had a negative test or if they've had coronavirus and recovered and therefore have the antibodies. And really the goal and the hope is that this will allow for a resumption of freedom of movement within the EU. It's been particularly pushed for by some of these tourism-dependent European countries like Spain and Greece, who really want to see a summer travel season. But it's still quite a controversial, open question of what this vaccine certificate would allow for. Some countries want it to allow for people who've been vaccinated to travel without, for example, quarantine restrictions. But other countries like Germany and France have said that that would be discriminatory towards the people who haven't been able to get the vaccine or aren't planning on getting it, as of course in the EU it's not mandatory to get a vaccine, it's voluntary. So there is certainly an ethical question that does have to be answered in the months ahead, but the EU is pushing forward with this idea and is hoping to get it into people's smartphones by the summer.
Chelsea, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for bringing us all the latest details on COVID coming out of the EU. We are now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.